All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. We have a super special guest with us this afternoon. I'm so excited. It's the first time in my LOC discussions we have somebody who actually speaks my native tongue, which is Dutch. And we're not going to have any problems, Mathijs, pronouncing your name properly this afternoon. And you won't have any problem pronouncing my name properly either.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll do the favor for you. You're Mathijs Sonnemans.
And you're
Good.
Stefan Huygen.
Stefan Euge, yeah. See, so now everybody who's known me by my English name knows how to pronounce it properly. I actually wrote an article a long time ago in Multilingual about how I localized my name because I just given up trying to teach it to people. So that's out of the window now. Here we go again. I'm going to go to a bunch of meetings next where people try to pronounce my name. Anyway, Matthias, we have a lot of questions for you, and you're kind of a top-notch technology guy and person du jour that we want to talk to. So, why don't we get started and introduce yourself to anybody that doesn't know who you really are, and give us your background and yeah, how did you end up in localization?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, I whenever I introduce myself on professional calls, I tend to be very short, but I'll take some more time now because well, we have an hour, not an hour just for my introduction though. Yeah. So I'm Matthijs from the Netherlands. Very important, not from Belgium. My background is in computer science and in philosophy, which I both studied. And as naturally someone who studied both of those things, it's a symptom of not really wanting to start working yet. I never felt like a typical programmer who would just, work at a bank and, get started from there. It's never been my sole passion to just focus on programming. Hence, even though my peers did it, that's why I also did a study philosophy, mainly to put off the decision. But unfortunately, it had to be made, and I decided to. Well, I found some people in Amsterdam who had a translation agency, and so I was like, oh, well, they seem like cool guys. I'll just join them, and that's how I got into the translation industry. It's all by accident. And it turns out that I fell in love with the translation industry because I immediately felt two things. Combining language and technology is incredibly hard. And I like a challenge. So that's one. And the other one, I see a lot of, well, opportunity in the sense that things are, well, genuinely really behind, I think, in our industry. And I see that as a way to help a lot of people for me. So now actually I don't work in NSP anymore. I work with Blackbird.io. And for those who don't know, it's a workflow automation platform focused on content and the localization industry. So we help everyone with very manual workflows or workflows that don't even exist yet, build new services for you, for your clients, for your colleagues, because we think a lot of things can be a lot better for us. So that's basically in, well, maybe 1 minute, my journey so far. And at Blackbird, I am the product manager, product owner. So my goal is to basically build the best workflow orchestrator possible that most people can benefit from. I basically decide on the prioritization of features that people need. And I'm a solution architect as well, which means that I help our clients set up workflows for them and guide them in that aspect.
And
And AI is a big part of that.
AI is a big part of that.
Yeah.
That's kind of where, where we
Yeah.
make the connection to the topic of today. One of the things that I've been interested in for a very long time is connectors, and that's kind of what Blackbird does as well. Am I correct?
Yeah, but everyone who knows me knows that what I'll say next is that I don't like the word connector.
Okay.
In our industry, we tend to talk a lot about that word because it's very important. It's a lot of times, no, literally the missing link between the technology that we have and our client. The reason I don't like the word is because I think it's a very narrow implementation of how to connect with your client. Because most of the time, a connector out of the box only does one thing for you, and it does the thing that it was designed to do. It basically had a vision on how you should connect with your client, and most of the times that's not maybe the way that you do want to connect with your client, or that your client wants to connect with you. So we take a little bit of a different paradigm there, and we focus a lot more on customization of that connection between the two, or of course internal automation, or any way you want to look at it.
So it's not like with Zapier where you just buy it out of the box. You guys customize your.
No, it is very close to Zapier, but in the same way that with Zapier you can set up very customized workflows, you can set up very customized workflows between you and your client. It's not as in some TMS products where you have a connector and then that really only defines one way you can do it. So it is a lot more like Zapier in that sense.
Okay. For those people that are new to our format, quickly want to remind you that our discussion is not supposed to be just a conversation between me and Matthijs. At least, I mean, we can have a conversation like that. But if you want to jump in, I'm notoriously bad noticing people raising their hands. So you're going to have to do it the European way and speak up, turn on your microphone and jump in. I welcome that. And if you have a question or a comment, please feel free to jump in and join the conversation. So those are the prerequisites, and don't count on me on seeing you if you're doing it in another way. So let's talk a little bit about some of the integrations that you're doing right now. Who should be interested in integrating AI into their localization workflow, and what does that really look like nowadays, since you have practical experience with it?
So I think who is maybe, well, it's not a wrong question, but it's maybe a little bit of the wrong question. I think if you think about who, then you're looking at personas that either have the scale or the size or the funding or basically the characteristics of being an LSP or a buyer or however else we define that. I'm looking more at a perspective of where and when. I think that's way more interesting of a question, because if you're just talking about who, then there's, well, the different workflows that you're creating, or in my language, of course, the different tasks that you do, the services that you offer, those are all very different. And I would say if you're positioning an LSP as a very boutique agency and you're doing really well with that, then you're not necessarily benefiting from AI. However, the use cases that are there, I think there are many, more favor a where and when question. So it's really more about the where and when. And to answer that part, then AI starts to become very interesting at large scales, and AI starts to become very interesting at certain types of content. So for your translation of a museum exposition, I don't think you want to go that route, because they're typically extremely high value, smaller volumes. But if you're localizing for a web shop, then it makes total sense to me. Yeah,
I'm already seeing in the chat that people are asking whether you're going to be sharing some visual aids and some examples with us. That lasted a whole 10 minutes before we got to this. I think Matthijs came prepared though, so.
I came prepared. I came prepared for certain very specific workflows. So I think we should go a little bit deeper onto some questions, and then we can go on to some visuals.
You tell us when the time is right.
I like working from the very abstract, and then because there's so much about AI that we can also discuss, like where's it in 10 years, and then let's talk about what we can do today. And
Bruno Herman, we have Bruno Bitter too. There's multiple Brunos in the group today, but Bruno Herman had a remark. You want to turn on your microphone for a second, Bruno? And
yeah, I can. It was just a comment indeed, Stefan. So it's a topic I discussed. It's a topic I discussed a number of times with the other Bruno who is there. I can see him. He's not hiding for a change. So yeah. Don't hide. And yeah, I mean, for the past couple of years as a consultant, I'm working more and more with organizations that are looking for integration of systems and tools because they want to create this unified and centralized ecosystem that is so important for not just localization operations, but also content operations as a whole. So from creation to delivery. And I think that from that perspective, I was always very interested and even hot for Blackbird. And that's how I started talking to Bruno, the other Bruno again, about, difficult today, about, the approach, which is great. I think what Blackbird is doing today is really timely and spot on. So that was my comment, just a comment.
All right, that's good.
From my experience, from working with
you got your
organizations.
first endorsement already, Mathijs.
I see that. Thank you, Bruno.
So let's talk about this a little bit. How do you foresee AI changing the basic business model of of translation services, so to speak? Where is it?
So I did a whole soapbox 2 days ago at Gala, and the title of the soapbox was "Language Service Providers Have No Business Being Language Service Providers." And I know that's deliberately very provocative. Yeah, very provocative title. But I do stand by it, and that's to the fact that we've currently seem to structure our business around a very word-based pricing model. And that word-based pricing model came from the fact that we're trying to estimate effort based on volume for people who have to translate it, which I've always disagreed with. Even for people, I don't think it makes sense. I think it's the way that you get a race to the bottom. And it also diminishes the value of offering services around it, because if you're word-based pricing, then you cannot actually offer or tend to offer other services as well. For example, services that have more to do with technology consulting. How do you set up a localization process? Which technology should you use? Which AI makes sense, which doesn't? I think that's such an important role that language service providers should have and should take. I think that's what should and I think will change in the industry, because that knowledge is just super important, because half the story is technical in my opinion. So the way the business will change, I think, will go away from we're just pricing by volume, and we go into actually delivering a service, and we get charged, or we get paid for delivering that service, because I think also buyers should stop seeing their LSP as just I'm sending them a file and we get a translated file back. I mean, I've said the words that's basically drop shipping translations, because you're just sending it over to the next translator and it's sending it back. If in their mind you're just a translator, even though you're an LSP, then you're not positioned to actually get paid very well for the service that you offer. But if you are in their minds actually someone that can help them with technological issues around translation, then that's a lot more valuable.
Yeah. So what are some of the most successful integrations that you guys are doing nowadays at Blackbird? What do we have to imagine? Things that wouldn't be like totally obvious right away, and then they really open up a window that is full of opportunity.
I see. We're going to go to the visuals.
With
that question. Yeah, I see.
Pushing you right into it.
Yeah, that's okay. Let me before I do that, let me say that we have, of course, different types of clients at Blackbird. So we do have LSPs of different sizes, and we do have enterprise clients as well. And what I see is that they are asking for different things. Not all of them. We have some very ambitious LSPs as well. But in theory, what a typical LSP I see, just with our clients, but also in the entire industry, what I hear and with whoever I talk, I see they're really concerned about the integration with the technology that they currently have. So they are really interested in, okay, I want to connect my TMS to my BMS, and I want to, connect my memo queue to my AI, and that's all really important. And there's a lot of things to win there, but it's totally not what I see enterprise clients be very interested in. They are more interested in setting up complete content pipelines that are automated, that leverage AI in different ways. And I mean, and only sending, for example, translations to a TMS only if absolutely required to be viewed by a linguist. And I think that's a very interesting development where we see the enterprise is definitely ahead in terms of their vision. So of course we can handle both, and of course I could show examples of us connecting TMSs with DMSs, but that's not I think the interesting things that we want to talk about today, because we're talking about innovation. What we see, well, let me share my screen and I'll share like a couple of examples here. Yeah, let's start there. I mean,
we're all on the edge of our seat.
we've been mentioning it enough. I think this is the correct one. There we go. So basically, I mean, it's okay. Not everybody knows what's going on here. It's different software that not everyone has seen. That's okay. But basically, what you're looking at is a workflow. So all these steps underneath each other are executed at some point in an automated way, and they're all defined by a trigger. For example, we are looking at a CMS trigger where some new content is being created, for example, and then we can start processing that content. So what we see here is that we're actually retrieving a glossary from, in this case, a TMS system, XTM, and we're putting that glossary into DeepL so that this glossary has been managed somewhere else, but we're putting into a different system, already connecting multiple things here. We see some conversion going on, and I want to talk about that more later. Because it's a very interesting gap currently that we see with AI, that all AI really works well on, well, strings, technical terms, but basically just raw text. It all works with that, but it doesn't really take files. And the most services that we offer and most workflows still are based on files going through. So there is some bridging in the gap to be done. If you may notice, there's no LLMs going on here. I'll show some other workflows at some point, but of course, NMT is also AI. We have MTQE here, model font, also AI. And we're processing all the same content in different steps. So we're first translating, and then we're using MTQE to basically give us a prediction on how well this content was translated. And based on that, we're making a decision. If the MTQ basically says, so a quality estimation, if the quality estimation comes back very positive, and we say we have a certain threshold for our fault tolerance, basically, but if it says basically it's good, then we see we can immediately push it back to the source, and you immediately have the translation back on the website. And otherwise, we are creating a new project, and we're uploading the file to that, so that, for example, a linguist can look at it, and later it will be uploaded again. And so you can see that we have modeled a certain business workflow where we're saying, okay, we're going to do a translation, even leveraging a term-based, a glossary. And based on the quality of the translation, we're either immediately pushing it back, or we are routing it to a linguist and later pushing it back. And that's already a very interesting business process workflow that I hope signifies that your TMS is not necessarily the central core of your technology stack anymore, because we see that enterprises are way more interested in this type of workflows.
So the first thing that comes to mind, this is very Zapier-like,
Yes.
the visual rendition of this, at least is.
Yes.
Now, a question that I would have immediately is like, this is a workflow that was negotiated? It was, somebody gave you the requirements? Somebody designed this themselves because you make it so easy for them to visually connect all these different steps? How does that aspect of the process work?
Well, not that one, this one in particular, because I don't want to show any of our clients' actual workflows. But this one is based on some parts of what we see is happening today, and I built this last week, just for example purposes of what you could do with this stuff. Yeah.
Right. But in a typical scenario, if a customer comes to you, they say, we need to connect these 5 steps, and then you consult with them? How does that work? Or they figure it out themselves and they come to you when they get stuck? How does it work?
The latter part. So yeah, we offer primarily the technology. So you can, if you are on Blackbird, you have all the ability to connect to all these applications. I think Bruno put a list of all the applications we integrate with out of the box in the chat. And you can just start playing, and we encourage everyone to just start playing, just build very, very simple workflows. Workflows around Slack are always very fun because you can just drop a file in Slack and immediately get a translation back, stuff like that. And that really activates people, and they can start seeing, well, there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think the best service I cannot create. I think the best service that actually a language service provider could actually create for themselves. And that can only happen by experimentation and a little bit knowing what's possible. But yeah, these type of things are just to exemplify.
Okay, and then this particular workflow doesn't include a large language model, but
No.
you can plug that in as well.
We can plug that in as well. So we have a lot of possibilities here. So I could, for example, just add OpenAI right in between here. If we're like, okay, we actually want, for example, OpenAI to do a automatic post editing already, if that is what you want. So we can ask it to process this this file, and we can select it, and basically even add the glossaries as well here that we exported from XTM in this case. We can export them from any TMS that has glossaries, and we can even add custom prompts here, basically telling it what to do, or we can even say that
you can make you can plug in your custom GPT right there.
Exactly. You can even add your custom GPT right there. You can basically give it more comments on what to do, and in that way, well, really what LLMs today enable us, and what I think AI in the future, what language technology is for me, because I like to use the definition of it's just technology that can, with very big quotes, reason about language and process language and create language. We will see more workflows that are more about content repurposing along different dimensions than just translation. So it's not just language that you're changing, it's also, for example, target audience in any different way than just the language that they speak.
Very interesting. What's the feedback you're getting from stakeholders that are involved with these new types of workflows? What's the feedback that you're getting
on the workflows itself?
Yeah, and on the innovations that you're bringing, so to speak, because this is pretty revolutionary.
Yeah, we see the feedback is well, I wouldn't say anything else, of course, than positive, but it is actually very positive, because we try to give people the tool to not need like an army of developers to build a custom integration for every client, but just give one person the power to build this in a matter of minutes, as you saw how easy it was to build this action. And I think that way people can focus a lot more on the fundamentals. People can focus a lot more on the more important parts like change management, like actually diving into these AIs, these models, training them themselves, and those like primitives, and then you don't have to worry about chaining them together. So the response specifically on these types of workflows that you see here, and I can actually show a couple more. Like I said before, is really, really positive by enterprises, as we see. They're really open to this, and we're trying to show all of our clients, including LSPs, like we see that this is really what people respond well to, and then hope to encourage them as well to maybe offer this as a service to their clients.
I'm always interested in nifty marketing, and you guys talk about birds. I really love that. So is this a bird that we're looking at right now? Is that
yeah, it's indeed a bird. It's a little bit of terminology like, okay, how do we see these things? A bird for us is basically a workflow. So it's something that you can fly, well, literally by hitting this button. That's what we call when the workflow executes. It's a flight. It's flying.
Who came up with that? I want to know who came up with it, because that's pretty nifty marketing.
Bruno actually came up with that when he started the company. But because blackbirds as a creature, they are migratory. So in the summer they're in Europe, and in the winter they're like in Northern Africa. So they are literally connecting different ecosystems.
Very neat.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
That's a good story there. Did you want to show us another example? Or you want-
Yeah, actually, I was about to. So let me show you one right here. So part of actually what I even talked about a lot at Gala is that with with technology like this, not necessarily technology like this, but with the advent of AI, you can start offering other services than just taking in a file, processing it, and giving it back. Because that's been traditionally very much the service that everybody offers. But there are so much more interesting things that we can do. And we see that with AI. Actually, let me show one that actually does have OpenAI in it. We can start seeing that like I said before, we can start repurposing content among different axes. But for the really best results, you need to add a lot of language sources, because if you just say translate, it's just going to do very generic translation. But the whole point of offering a custom service is that you're actually using the client's glossary, terminology, style guides, and what I just call in general language resources. And I think those language resources are becoming a lot more important going forward. So with that, we can see, for example, that you can offer a service where you're saying, well, instead of us waiting for you to create a new content, for example, or sending us a new file, we are just going to look at whenever you change your language resources, and based on that, we're going to update your existing content that includes those resources. So an example would be you are an e-commerce your web shop, and your marketing director says, okay, we're going to change all the words. We're going to completely rephrase how we're promoting ourselves. So your whole style guide would change, your whole terminology would change. And right now you would have to then call your LSP and be like, yeah, we're going to do it all over again. And oh, that's difficult. And you know what, that's typically then seen as a hurdle. But you can offer as a service, well, you can just do that at any time, and we just take care of it automatically. So what you're looking at here would be the event where the terminology is changed. This is by termbase.io. And based on the terminology changes, you're going to actually say, okay, let's search now, in this case, in the CMS Sitecore. I also have another example with, for example, Shopify. Let's go through all the products. Let's go through all the marketing content, and let's process them and again, using, for example, the updated terminology. So nobody ever should think that it is a hurdle to change the marketing strategy. You can just do it on the fly, and it would update all your channels simultaneously. And with that, I think we start to also may see services like this, where the terminology, the resources around languages are more important. And you can again start offering something that goes beyond just, web-based pricing, etc.
Hey Mario, you had a question. You broke protocol though. You raised your hand, and it took me forever to see it.
No,
But
that's okay.
You're very lucky. I did see it. You wanna ask a quick question? Go ahead.
Yes, Mathijs, hi, this is Mario. I noticed in some of the examples in this particular segment, import glossary, and I wonder if we can hear something about the benefits and risk of importing glossaries into any workflow that is, AI enabled or MT enabled, because it's something that I have researched a little bit, but I wanted to hear hear your experience and your thoughts on that.
So what risks are you alluding to specifically?
Well, for example, and if I may, DeepL is one of the, shall we say, elements in this particular workflow or loop. And they offer, for example, like other platforms, they offer, you can import like up to hundreds or up to 1,000 glossaries for brand consistency and other things. That sounds pretty shiny and nice, but SmartLink in a guidance document tells us that an important glossary, the terms will overwrite the translation, which is something that my team at home, so to speak, has sadly experienced. When they tried to, use a glossary, it was a disaster. So that's the angle I'm bringing in. I wanted to hear your thoughts.
I see what you mean. So we actually have experienced the same when we add style guides, for example. If the style guide talks about the currency and the date format, and there is no currency or date in the source content, it will certainly start adding these things. And the same indeed with terminologies. If you're using words that are not there, then they're hallucinating really hard. So they might even add it. What we actually do, well, so first of all, if you find a way to make it better, then use your prompt and then apply it in this technology. So you're not reliant on us actually doing that for you. But in the prompts that we do predefine, we actually go through each terminology item and actually check if it's actually part of the source content, because we don't want to increase the token size too much. And B, we also have the risk for hallucination. So that was our method of handling it. Okay, that's the very naive answer of it. But one way to do it, for example, is to already pre-process these to compare the source content to the actual terminology or glossary that you have and reduce it therefore. That is one way to approach this problem, I think. But I'm sure other people can figure out better ways even. Or we just have to wait for better LLMs.
Or actually, if I may, as a follow-up, the solution that we're applying is depend more on basically customize the translation model if you are going to use one, which it has nothing to do with the LLM.
Yeah.
Customize it with our own translation memory, which already has the terminology. So there's no need for us to import any glossaries. That's the solution we're aiming at.
You can pre-train these things as well, but then of course it becomes the trade-off. Like how often do you want to retrain these things, and then So it becomes such a technical story, which again hopefully emphasizes my point. LSPs should be thinking about this and doing this and offering this as services. We should own this space.
Is this maybe an opportunity to involve retrieval augmented generation and do something with RAG in this particular case?
It is a form of RAG indeed. If you're saying, well, we're actually adding the glossaries in there, but only we're looking at part of the glossary rather than the whole. That is the definition of RAG. Personally, I don't use the word RAG, because to me, RAG is a trick or a pattern that you use just as much as programmers use certain patterns every day and talk about it. So it's merely an optimization technique, not completely merely, but
so what term should we be using, Matthijs?
Oh, it's just how you approach LLMs today. It's just it should be the standard. It should be your process, how you should think about it. It should be normalized in that sense.
Okay. Was there anybody else had a question? Oh, don't be shy now. What's the AI integration you're most excited about, Matthijs, nowadays?
So in terms of Blackbird, it's definitely the process we've made by enabling all the glossaries from all the TMS systems and dedicated terminology systems like Termbase to be usable in all the LLMs and NMTs that support it. So in that sense, ragging it up, to use the word.
Now you're using it.
I used it myself. Yeah, you started it, so I won't use it again. And the other part, well, I alluded to it very briefly before. We actually have a secret technology hidden deep in our industry, because, like I said, these models and most NMTs don't handle files at all. They just work on text. But we have, segmentation has for 30 years been a very core part of our industry. That's what a lot of TMSs are based on. So what we did is we integrated with Okapi, which is an open source, not a TMS, but just more of a tool for localization engineers to process files in different ways. And Okapi, the tool, has the ability to turn a lot of different file types into an XLIF, and from the XLIF back into the original file format when translated. So it allows us to certainly, not worry anymore about what file type is being sent to us or as an LSP. And you can just very comfortably say, okay, we'll just convert it to XLIF without actually having to touch a TMS or a primary TMS in the first place. We can do all types of operations on it, and then send it back in a transformed form. And doesn't even have to be in a different language. And I think that technology has been there for a long time for us, and it's quite of a hidden gem because it allows certainly a lot of AI to just work on these files, which initially is not possible. Only, for example, OpenAI only allows it in Assistant, and then only with certain file formats, very limited. Not all LLMs do this. They definitely don't start parsing non-plain text-based files into it. So it's quite interesting use of our relatively ancient technology and combining it with something new, and that together I think brings a lot of opportunity.
Okay, a couple of times you've said something that piqued my interest. I think you called it multi-dimensional content.
Yes.
Repurposing. To me, that sounds like.
Yeah, it sounds fancy, right?
Yeah, it sounds multimodal. We're doing
Yeah.
something completely different. So that's super interesting. Maybe you can elaborate about that a little bit.
I would not say it's necessarily multimodal. It can be multimodal, but that's just the output format. Like, okay, we've got images, we've got audio, we've got video, we've got text. That's what multimodal is. But for me, multidimensional is, as I said before, we've only ever offered a service on one dimension, or almost. We had a word for it. We have a word for it, transcreation. We're actually rewriting text. But most often we're just doing a one-dimensional operation from one language to the other. And with this, the real power LLMs bring here is that you suddenly are free in multiple dimensions. You can look at the age of the target group. You can look at the regional words for the target group. You look at the socioeconomic place of the target group. You can look even at the humor appetite of the target group. It becomes a lot more dimensions that you can optimize for, because ultimately language serves a purpose, and the better we can serve that purpose, the better our service, I think, ultimately. And with that, we can certainly start harnessing that. And then the question starts to become, okay, how do we optimally do that? One way to look at it is, okay, we can basically tell the client, okay, you've got different channels that you want to put language into, whether it's video, audio, text, up to you. And we can create very different strategies for each of these channels, and we can use AI in order to have the content ultimately better fit for purpose, because that's what it can do. That's one way to do it. But then what your bottleneck suddenly becomes is those language resources. Let me actually stop sharing my screen for now here, because it might distract. Is these language resources, which become a lot more important, because suddenly for every channel you need to have maybe a different term base, maybe a different style guide, and that might certainly become the bottleneck of things. So what you could do even is basically point a certain workflow or AI at a channel and say, okay, tell me what is the humor that these people use? What is the tone of voice that these people react to? What is the words that they are activated by? And you can then certainly build these language resources relatively automatically. Please, in any point, insert a human into that conversation, insert a linguist, and have them check it. But you can start automating that part as well. You could, for practical example, let's say that you are you have a blog on your website and you want to start pushing that to Medium, it's just a blog website, or you want to start pushing that to LinkedIn as snippets. What you can do is say, okay, let's analyze basically the conversation that's going on both these places. Let's analyze the comments, let's analyze certain articles and see what really works. Have an AI do that, and then use those resources in order to instruct it to repurpose your content really for that certain channel. So that's a workflow or multiple workflows together that work really well that you can start building. And I think those are the more interesting services that we might start seeing soon. where it's really optimized not just for language but for any other variable for a certain location. And I think ultimately, if left unchecked, we might be in the future. It's a little bit dystopian, I think, where all the content you see, all the textual and visual and audio content you see, all the language that's being sent to you through any digital device is fit for you, because it used exactly everything it knew about you, all the data that you had, exactly your appetite for humor, exactly what made you buy certain things, and it will repurpose language in such a way specifically for you. And because right now all channels are like very broad, like a website is very broad, LinkedIn is very broad, it's for everyone, but we might seeing very specialized repurposing as well. And I think, of course, that's a little bit dystopian.
Yeah.
Today we don't have as far as I know, there's no real big platform that actually allows you to target text to people in the same way, other than chat messages, where we might start seeing it first. But yeah, that certainly starts
That was
to
going to
be
be
reality.
that's what I was thinking of while you were explaining this, is that certainly hyper-personalization is a trend that we see interest in everywhere. And naturally, people are very interested in using multilingual chatbots in the workspace as well. The drawback up until now has been that we didn't have a lot of control on the automated systems communicating with customers, so to speak. But in the future, applying some of the techniques that you were just talking about, wouldn't it be possible, you think, to be able to personalize the conversations in such a way that not only does it take your preferences into account, but it also implements the vocabulary of the organization and the way things are supposed to be run properly, so to speak. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the skill that's interesting. Like linguists, I have the deepest respect for. They are still better at this. It's just not possible to do it at the same scale. Like you can, if you put a dedicated team of linguists on this and say, okay, we're going to craft the best messages for LinkedIn, we're going to craft the best messages for here, they're going to do a really good job. But you cannot do this if you start, for example, running chatbots that way. That's simply not possible. But it's very much in the realm of possibilities that you look at the first message that you get sent to your chatbot, and if it's like, "Dear Sir, Madam," then okay, you're gonna go for a very formal response. And if it's like, "Hey, I wanted to," and then it's gonna be a very lively and different tone of voice as a response. And I think that's very very interesting, and that's where definitely now you can already start seeing the application. And again, where I think that LSPs can jump into a place of, hey, we can start offering this as services where we can guide the customer in using different technologies and different workflows for different channels to optimize for whatever goal you have for your language. Not necessarily sales. It can also be any other goal that you have.
yeah. What are some of the new services, just from a non-technical point of view, so to speak? If I were a small-ish LSP interested in offering some new services, what are some of the things that your product can offer out of the box, so to speak?
It always depends. Like, do you immediately want to connect to the source, the system of the client or systems of the client? If that's what you're doing, then I think all of the above apply. Scroll back and see what we just talked about. But I think the more interesting thing, if you're a smaller LSP that works, but I see if you work with a lot of smaller companies or mid-sized companies, then it tends to be I sent you a file via email, or I just have some sort of portal where we drop some files into, and then you just take care of it. I think you can definitely still start offering multi-dimensional repurposing there, where you say, okay, just give us a little bit more information about your target audience, or maybe that's already been negotiated. But what you can start doing is also looking at whatever content comes in, and then automatically determining what type of workflow you need to apply to it. So you could, if your intake is basically, okay, we allow everything, and we're just gonna process it than if you're getting a, let's say, a legal document through the same channel as just some marketing copy, which might even be very high value for you, but generally these are of different calibers. You can use AI to basically determine, okay, what type of content is this? And based on that, which workflow do I now have it go into? So you can analyze basically the source content and determine, okay, this is low value. Let's just send it to an NMT and then immediately return it. Or you can say, okay, we determine this is high value. Let's now set up a linguistic process with people involved. And it's, I think, also a very important way that you can start using AI to take the load of your project managers. Project managers should do what they're really good at, and that's talk to people. And they shouldn't be really bothered with, oh, we've got this
They
file
should be
now, let's
selling,
see.
really, is my opinion, but that's, I don't know that there's a lot of people that agree with me, or there's probably some people that disagree with me, but they're the ones that have the closest relationship with the customers often.
Yeah.
Kai,
So-
you had a couple of comments in the chat. You want to turn on your microphone and join in for a second?
Yes, hi everyone. Hello, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
trying to
Yeah, we
find
were
you.
discussing in the chat more or less like what is the better source of truth, the translation memory or the term base. I think it's sometimes a bit difficult to see the differences. For us, I mean, the terminology is a great source when we are like, you know, trying to translate, for example, with a large language model. We can kind of integrate it into the translations, the same with style guides. And I don't know, we don't, you know, really believe that translation memory is always the most efficient source to curate. I saw at clients that, for example, sometimes they were working in the source code. It's a very extreme example, but just to make them match very well in their translation memories. And then sometimes the translation memories get completely out of control. There's no one who's, you know, controlling or correcting them. And sometimes everything goes together into one big kind of data source. So for us, it's better, you know, when you work with the large language model, at least at the moment where we don't have the AGI, like the general intelligence that can be more clever than us, having a higher IQ more or less than us for the moment, because the large language model is more or less predicting always the next word in the corpus. Monolingual or in a monodirection trained, not like a supervised learner. It's better to really give it instructions, like to say, please use this terminology, and even give it like maybe an example or two from the translation memory for how the term is used and when it's maybe not used. This works well, but it's not so great to just give it some examples from the translation memory. This is not so nice. It doesn't really understand. Yeah.
Yeah, the biggest problem today with LLMs, I think, well, the biggest is a strong word, is indeed if you send it too much, it's really quickly going off the rails. So it's really about being very specific. And I think indeed what Kai says, a term base is way more specific than a TM.
So for us, for example, we did some projects where we really translated with ChatGPT. So we used 3.5 and the 4 model. The problem, what we really have is this, I mean, what is really great is that you can give it more context. You can basically tell it, look, dear model, here, this was the sentences before, and these are the sentences afterwards, and it really understands. It's like charging up the neurons, like in our brain, more or less. I mean, I've always make some examples to the people to kind of let them understand what this means. It's like, for example, where humans also do have right this neural pattern in the brain, and when we tell them translate to whatever language, the driver is not working. You don't know how you should translate the driver. But if I tell you before, I cannot use my computer mouse, then you know it's the computer driver, because someone puts on the neuron in your head. I mean, there's more than one neuron about what the driver means. And the same happens in the large language model. So it has really neurons. It is clever. It can also be creative. So this is something people have problems with. I also, last week when I met Mathijs and Bruno at the Gala conference, we had some panel discussions where the topic was like, AI can just do routine tasks. And this is completely wrong. I mean, for the moment, we don't really see it because people don't use it that well, and the technology is not so far yet. But it's really made for doing creative tasks at this point. Of course, it is a remix, but humans also do a remix. Most of what they see and what they hear and what they learn and the culture. And so for us, it's really good if we have the LLMs, because for us as a developer, it's a cool tool to really make context work. So, but the problem is they are too slow. So we really would like to do this, to use it right now. Just as Mathijs said, it's awesome to work with XLIF. So what Mathijs showed in Blackbird, now you can use the XLIF. So Mathijs, for example, could do now a little action in the Blackbird and say, okay, here, these segments you send, then you send the segment you really want to translate, or the 4 or 5, and then the segments after, and it will give you a great result, especially when the models get better and better. But for now, they are just not fast enough. So yeah.
Mario, you had another comment real quick?
Yes, if I may. Thank you, Kai, for bringing that up, like putting terminology vis-a-vis translation memories. If the translation memories are properly maintained, they offer something the terminology list does not have, which is context, and not just one context, but multiple contexts. For example, if your client's documentation uses the same words, for example, or verbs, but in different contexts, and it is in other words, is highly specialized documentation. So the terminology may also, a well-maintained terminology can help with the metadata, for example, definitions or examples, so that we can tell, for example, if I'm translating manually, I can decide, oh, this is the better translation for this term than this other one, because I have 3 or 4 entries for the same term, but no LLM can distinguish that.
Let me interject the provocative question on this particular issue. I've been talking to a lot of people that believe that segmentation is actually on its way out, and therefore that traditional TMs, the way we've known them for the past, say, 25 years, are also on the way out. So what's your opinion about that, Mathijs?
I think what Mario says is true. Whether we have segmentation or not, if you have a memory of what you deem is a good translation, a TM gives you more context. And a TM can, of course, have really large segments in it. We just accept, okay, TM is the source of truth, of what we accept is a very good translation in context. But the problem right now is that with today's technology, that's just too large to apply. Apparently, clearly, in the current LLMs, potentially, maybe it's too slow, maybe it's too costly, and therefore term bases it's basically a trade-off right now, I would say so. But I like to, like I said before, I like to approach this technology as a multi-year phenomenon where, okay, these are today's limitations. Maybe in a year from now or faster, we're going to have something entirely different, a different model, not even an LLM, but we approach it differently. But it's still capable of taking language in, putting language out, and reason about it, and perform tasks that we like to have done. I think years from now that will still apply. This technology exists today. It's LLMs, and these are clearly the shortcomings of LLMs. It's time and cost constraint. If we want to give it as much information as possible to make the best output possible, then yeah, that's going to be feasible for multiple reasons, and therefore we have strategy like using the term bases today. It's always a trade-off.
So we only have a couple of minutes left, and you gave us the perfect segue into my last question for you. What do you think are the emerging technologies that will be revolutionizing the localization industry that are not yet in place right now? Do you have any predictions?
My crystal ball is not big enough for that type of predictions. I think that's who could have predicted where we are today 5 years ago? I don't think many people could have. I mean, officially, the paper was already out about LLMs, but what their potential was, I think, wasn't clearly visible. I think, like I said, we will start seeing an increase in potency of this technology. What I think the biggest shortcomings today are of course consistency. Even we see that. So for truly automated processes, you need some type of consistency to what you're getting returned back from your LLM, and that's sometimes still proving to be an issue. Because if you're just running code, it's very predictable what you put in, what you put out, and you can just fly that way. But with LMs, that's a big issue. And of course, I think it must have been mentioned on this podcast multiple times, is hallucination. The big problem is the way that we train these LLMs is with a ton of text, and it's the only way we can have it output something sensible, that like as if spoken by a human, as if written by a human. The only way we can judge that it's really good. But with inputting a ton of text, we also input a ton of content that's not necessarily what we want. So I think a big leap would be if we can build a model that's able to speak, but doesn't have the baggage of the data that it was trained on. So I always make this distinction whenever talking about AI. I think everyone in their head should, whenever they hear the word AI, they should hear the word data. And talking about what can it do today, what can it do if AI can do this and that. If you just substitute AI with the word data, then sometimes things make a lot more sense or don't make a lot of sense. And it's a good way to cut the truth from the falsehoods in this space when it comes to the discussion about it.
And the hour is already more or less over. Is there anybody else who has a question in the audience?
Just a quick thing,
Yeah.
Mathijs, appreciate the clarifications and the presentation overall. It's something not usual. So I appreciate this. And when you mention AI, to look at it as, okay, data, I'm reminded of GIGO, garbage in, garbage out. Basically, the output will be as good as what we put in, how we train it, right?
But there's a lot of companies though that have a lot of curated data
but I think,
to them.
can I just add, I think there is also a lot of rubbish on the internet and in TMs especially. I think if the LMMs they're trained basically on TMs, right?
The biggest are not trained on TMs. They're not even big enough. No, they're trained on the internet. And that's also sometimes quite garbage.
Well, that's even worse. I mean, no, because what I was thinking of, I don't know if any of you know the CAT tool MemoQ. They use translation memories, but they also have a thing called Live Docs, which has the documents that have been translated, the entire document, which gives you everything in context, and that is a great help when you're doing a very particular things, especially as you were saying before, where you've got the same word having different meanings depending on the context around it. And if you were using that kind of information, whether it's the entire document to feed into your LMMs, maybe then what you were getting out would be more reliable, or not.
In theory, yes. It's just with this type of thing, it pains me to say always that my science, computer science, has become way more empirical than it should have been. And it's empirical just we just need to try an experiment and see if it works that way. But because we don't know, we cannot say anything for sure really in this space.
Yeah, maybe that's the right way to part ways this afternoon is you at Blackbird are certainly giving us an incentive to go try some of these new workflows and experiment with new services in the future, and you're enabling it in a way that is very innovative. So Matthijs, I thank you so very much for spending an hour with us on a Friday evening, where you could have been having a Heineken at your local pub there in Utrecht. So
No
Thank-
Dutch person would ever do that.
yeah. But thank you so very much for spending some time with us, and thank you everybody for joining. I look forward to seeing you all again in another month, and have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Bye for now.
Thank you.